Hello, my name is Levi, and this is the Wax Poetic Podcast. Welcome. My guest today is Paul, and we're going to be talking about
Sandinista. There's an exclamation point in the end, so I gotta throw that in there.
When was the first time you heard this? How old were you? What was going on in your life?
Must have been high school because I really came into the Clash, who were just about my favorite band. I mean, I don't listen to them as often as I used to, but I mean, just to this day, they're probably my favorite band. So I probably heard Sandinista in high school, like late high school, or if not college, maybe like all the way through. For a lot of years, it wasn't my favorite Clash album, but over the years, it has grown on me immensely.
Most of my knowledge for the Clash kind of begins and ends on combat rock.
Really?
So when you suggested this album, or when you told me this is the album you wanted to do, I listened to like the first 4 songs, and I was like, am I missing something? So I stopped it, and I went back and listened to the first 2 Clash albums, London Calling and their first one. And
that's actually the third one, because there's Give 'Em Enough Rope, which is between the Clash and then London Calling, and then Give 'Em Enough Rope in the middle, which is
okay. Well, those are the 2 I did listen to, and then I listened to a little bit of Stiff Little Fingers, and then some Madness, and then I went back and listened to this whole album.
You did like all, I mean, I guess it'd be 3 LPs. So like, I think it's on CD. It would be like a double CD now.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There is.
In this album. Yeah, I did see an interview with Joe Strummer where he said everything that they recorded over the 3 weeks, their recording sessions, they put on the album, which makes sense. I see that.
He also has this quote that I love, and I think it's applicable to life in general, which is, I think I'm going to butcher this quote, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase. He goes like, if somebody said, maybe we should play this with a balalaika, we would get the biggest balalaika we could find. I mean, that's sort of like if you could condense the record into the album, because it's 3 records technically,
just really go for it.
Yeah, it's in with like abandon too, just like, let's try it, let's fucking try it.
Well, the one thing that I realized, this is what a punk band could sound like in the 80s and late 70s. Well, at least British punk. American punk was more about distorted guitars and aggression. But with British punk, you could do this. You could do different genres, still saying everything the punk song would say, but have it in a reggae song, have it in a rockabilly song, and just still be the same. It would still be acceptable.
Yeah. I mean, even in this particular record, it opens up with the Clash doing rap, at least like the early 80s version of rap, which is done in such a Strummer way, because like the lyrics are so oblique and just stream of consciousness. And it's got that early hip-hop cadence, so it's not the best rap, but it's still like got that New York feel to it, like early 80s feel to it.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was rap until halfway through the album when the other song comes on that's kind of similar to this one.
I love this album, but to be honest, like every single track and that's part of the reason why I love it, is like I can skip some tracks in this album. I think that's the beauty of it. It is
lightning strikes.
Lightning Strike, that's right. As Joe Strummer says, it's warts and all, this album. And for that reason, I think it's more punk than the most hardcore American band of the time, just because, you talk about punk, it's the rejection of orthodoxy and the embracing things that go against the grain. And this record goes against the grain in a lot of ways.
It goes against a lot of different grains.
Yeah, but not in like a jackass Lou Reed kind of way, like which is, I mean, we can talk about Metal Machine music, which is an album I love and hate at the same time. Like I will listen to it, like I will hate listen to it, but I love the energy that is so Lou Reed when you listen to that record. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's literally like was a double record full of feedback noise. But that said, that's so Lou Reed. This is so the Clash, because it is positive chaos.
Definitely. Well, and another thing, kind of going along with that, I guess, is doing this podcast, I've been listening to a lot of rap and a lot of hip hop, and I realized that in those genres, you can be eclectic like that and just pull from a bunch of different types of music, and it sounds fine. If you have a modern rock band that tries something a little different, you know, they get roasted, and people are like, "What are you doing?" One of my favorite bands, they just released this version of a Stevie Wonder song, and I was like, "What? Huh? What are you doing?" Maybe I need to go back and re-listen to it. I think it was for a charity or something. But there's another thing. One of my other favorite bands is Muse, and on their last album, they did a gospel version of one of their songs, and I was just like, was no one in the studio that could have said, "Come on, guys, you sure you want to do this song?" We sure we're doing this. So, but and even with saying that, this album actually sounds really kind of modern, because it does a lot of things that I see in like these modern like rap and hip hop albums doing. They just pull from a different types of music and makes it sound new.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the beauty of the Clash is they can do that, but still, like, it doesn't feel like they're appropriating. It feels like they're celebrating in a lot of ways. Because I mean, you've got like Mikey Dread on this record, you know, great Jamaican toaster producer, you know, opened up for them when they played in New York, their big like run of shows at Bonds, and I think Grandmaster Flash opened for them in that run too. So it's like, they embraced the hell out of New York. In fact, sorry, stop me if I'm, because I can, I'm just going. I'll just
go ahead.
So, you know, it starts off with the Magnificent Seven, which is the first lead track on the album. Whenever that came out, they also did a like an extended instrumental version, which is very Jamaican. So it's the version, which we call like just the backing track. You just kind of like amp up the bass and you kind of like take out all the lyrics. But that, it was called the Magnificent Dance. Yeah, that's right. And it's got a few other names, but they released that, and it got picked up by like the nascent New York hip hop station. This punk band from England is getting played on this like early New York hip hop station, and I think it was actually credited to Pepe Unidos, which is sort of like Joe Sturmer used that pseudonym a lot. So I don't think people listening to it knew it was the Clash.
Well, there is one song on here. At the beginning, it has the guy that's a DJ at the New York stations. And I guess it's somebody in the band that called, say, "Hey, how about some music?" Because
that's Joe.
Called in during a talk show.
Yeah, that's Joe. You can tell it's Joe.
The Magnificent Seven, it's very much that early rap kind of flow to it. And 1980, this is probably recorded in 79 sometime, I'm suppose.
Yeah.
It's the early days of rap, I guess, still.
I mean, Mick Jones was the one that was really into it, which is funny because Mick Jones was like the rocker, or he wasn't the rock. He was just like the pop. Like he's a lead guitar player, but he's a great songwriter, like a great melody song. Because Joe was a great lyricist, but he was not he was not a melodies guy. Mick Jones was a melodies guy. He was good at songs, but he was the guy that got into hip hop really early on, to the point where he was kind of a fanboy, and people that knew him to him, they called him Whack Attack because he was sort of a nerd about it. But I mean, you can come at this album from so many different ways too. And that's why I think it's why it took me so long to appreciate it for its like, because it is so modern in that way. It's just trying things in a way that like nobody does anymore, or did at the time either. It's so Jamaican in that way too, and it's just getting into a studio and just messing around. Like there's a version on it, like Jamaican Singles, you'd have on the A side, you'd have like the song, and then on the B side it'd be like the dub version.
Yeah,
and they do that with One More Time, which is a great like reggae song in and of itself, but then you got like the version
right immediately after. Yes. I thought that was weird. It's a weird choice, but still.
But that's what you would do with like a reggae single. You would have the song, and then you'd have the version that like a toaster would come in, like Mikey Dread would come in and like toast over it. And actually, now thinking about it, there's an instrumental version of Rock the Casbah. There's actually an instrumental version of that I've got a bootleg of Ranking Roger from the English Beat toasts over that backing track. It's so good. So good. I warned you.
No, it's totally fine, because there was a lot to this album, and I know I listened to this thing multiple times, but I don't think I let any of the songs really get as much alone time in my brain as what I would normally do with this.
What was your like initial thought? Because you listened to like the first few tracks and then you listened to the whole thing. Like, what was your like first run through? What was like? It was like a deer in the headlights sort of like.
Yeah, like I said, I listened to the first 4 songs. Am I not remembering the Clash right? So I had to go back and listen to other Clash, and I realized, oh, okay, yeah, this is the right band. This is the album. But they really just went off and just, hey, let's cover everything we're into. Let's pull that all in here and make an album on it.
Objectively, if you look at it objectively, London Calling is a better, like a more solid album. It's a well-produced, I mean, even at 2 LPs, it is still a tight record. Because like whenever I first listened to it, you could almost sense, I mean, not that they were doing this or intentionally or not, they weren't. I know they weren't, but like it almost feels like a concept record. If you listen to it, it feels like this like apocalyptic sort of like concept record, but it's tight, well produced. All the levels are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot to Guy Stevens, who engineered and helped them produce that album. Or you listen to their first album, which is, you know, imagine Adolescence. That is a very adolescent album. I mean, there's some righteousness about it. If you listen to the American version, it's got Police and Thieves on it, the Gina Mervin cover, but then it's a very much an angry album. But then you listen like Give Enough Rope, their second, which is, but this one feels like, and also I'll say Combat Rock feels like an elegy. It feels sad. Mm-hmm. Like if you, even with the inclusion of Rock the Casbah or Should I Stay or Should I Go, which is a breakup song, essentially, it feels like letting go. But this album, because it is so insane and bananas, it feels so joyous for that reason.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some of these songs, because I have a couple of notes on some of them. Obviously, the Magnificent Seven, great song.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned about it is it's about a minimum wage worker working and getting that 7 hours of work and going home and living till the next day.
Yeah. Joe didn't indulge in this sort of songwriting often with the Clash. He would do it a lot more when he went solo. So it's like sort of like word salad, sort of like almost beat poetry sort of approach to songwriting. He did that a little bit with the Clash, but like later on in his solo stuff, he really gets into that sort of like that lyric mashup Burroughs style, like cut and paste or lyrical style. In fact, there's a really good song from the early solo from Joe Strummer, which is it's actually one of my favorite songs in the entire world. It's called Trash City, which is just a fun song. It's credited to Joe Strummer in the Latin Rockabilly War, which is just a great band name, which is just a bunch of LA musicians. Yeah, just a bunch of LA musicians that he was hanging out with, and they just said like, let's record a song, and they did. And it's really great.
Yeah, and that's I think that's how it was done back in the day.
Yeah,
it was just people hanging out in the studio, like, hey, try this. Great, that worked. That was awesome. Let's record that, and that's on the album. You know, I think there's a lot of curation that's done nowadays for, you know, albums. I don't know if it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a bad thing.
I mean, I think there's more at stake now. I think to not get it perfect means that you're risking being forgotten really quickly. So if you don't get it perfect, it's like that's your shot.
Yeah.
There's like an intentionality now that I don't think that. I mean, no matter your genre of music, I don't think that there's. Maybe you talk about Motown. There's an intentionality there, just because Berry Gordy was Berry Gordy. But now I think there's a quality control, and you know, rightfully or wrongfully. I mean, sometimes it creates great art, but you know, I think in like any genre, there was a more sense of let's try it, and across genres, and you know, anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's the Clash or you know the Ohio Players. It's sort of like we're gonna put it on the record for
good or bad. It's there.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Motown, I guess the second song, I'm not going to go through every single one of these songs. We'll be here all night. Yeah. But the second song, Hitsville, UK.
Yeah.
3, yeah. But Hitsville, UK does mention, you know, it's Motown inspired, I guess. The idea behind it. Mm-hmm. But I think there's always been that kind of mistrust between like bands and like large record labels. I guess it's always existed. what I'm looking at here. But have you ever been like disappointed when a band gets on a major label and you're just, but they still turn out a really good record?
I mean, yes and no. Probably when I was younger, you know, when I had more of that, like, you know, again, punk and orthodox should not go, like the idea that there is one version of punk is not like punk.
Yeah.
But probably when I was younger, it's like, oh, it's, young, dumb kid, like, oh, there's sellouts. But, I mean, modern bands, it's like, there's not a whole, like, people don't listen to a band because they're like on, secretly Canadian, then they move to like, I don't know what even a major is these days, like Sony. Like, because that just doesn't happen. And there's so many avenues for like, you don't need a label now. I mean, it'd be nice to have just because you can, so you don't have to worry so much. But yeah, not really, because I mean, this is not like a flex. Like the bands I listen to have ever really had that problem.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean to like, like, would I be disappointed? Probably not. Just, I mean, as long as like if they were jumped to another label and they, changed that much, they probably weren't that good to begin with. If they're just willing to like not sell out in like a capitalism way, selling out their art, like, the like that willingly. I mean, if you want to talk about labels in Sandinista, do you know the story about London Calling, about it being a double album?
I do not. Well, I know that this one, they took a pay decrease to put it out.
Yeah, so London Calling, they wanted to do a double album, which they did, but they did it in a very sneaky way. They said, hey, CBS, we want to release this as a double album. And CBS was like, no, double albums don't sell. And the Clash were like, all right, well, how about if we, release a single like a single LP, but we include like a bonus like flexi disc, which is like a 12-inch, but like not like wouldn't normally have like a full LP's worth of music on it. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And they just filled it with LP. So they just really
oh wow.
They snuck a double LP because they really like. Here's the thing with the Clash: they wanted to always keep their the prices of their records down. So was their way of saying,
get your money's worth, right? Yeah.
They
want to pay for the album. You're going to get plenty of music off of it. Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like CBS, like, oh, you Clash boys,
darn you,
darn you. But then they go and no animosity between like Bruce Springsteen and the Clash, is that him and Joe like were good buddies. But the CBS went and released like The River not too long after London Calling, and the Clash were like, wait, where was your?
That's a double album. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like the Clash were like, where was your like resistance there for that double album? So they said, hey, CBS, we're making this a triple album, and you get Sandinista. And like you said, they took a pay cut. I forget what I don't have a brain for the business as.
There was some numbers in there. I just knew it was a pay cut. Yeah,
like Frank Pantangeli in The Godfather 2 is like, I don't have your brain for big deals. But yeah, it was a pretty big, like, I think it was like royalties on the first 50,000 copies, which is crazy. Like they forfeited that plus like a huge cut on subsequent. So. Yeah,
but still, I mean, that says something about the band. They're, like I said, they just really feel for the people that got to buy it. Nowadays everything is on colored vinyl. Everything is like $40. That's insane to me. That a vinyl record is going to cost me $40. That's where we are in the world, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's also like now it's probably a because that was the media back then. I mean, the medium is like the vinyl album. So
it's
like
this
that
way or no way.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's like the vinyl is it's not a premium because that's, if you want to support an artist, that's how you like support them now. But it feels premium because you're getting this like package. It's like this thing. You're not like putting a headphone jack into a computer. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about like everything. Like, I mean, looking at the like track list, and it's like, oh, and like Police on My Back, which I mean, along with the weirdness, because there's a lot of weirdness in this album. Like there's like Mickey Gallagher's kids sing like on this album.
They cover their own song with their kids.
Mickey Gallagher played for Ian during the Blockheads. He was kind of like, he's the keyboard, like he came and helped play keyboards for them, which I think he did on London Calling as well. But like his kids come and sing a song. There's a really, really good songs on here. Like Somebody Got Murdered is a great song.
It's a great song.
That's a really awesome pop song, or like, rock.
It's a pretty straightforward rock song on that.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. And also like A Police on My Back, which is a cover of The Equals. Really great band. Eddie Grant, who went on to do Electric Avenue. fun, but like that his band was the Equals in the '60s, and that's a cover of their song, which it's such a great cover. And then, Charlie Don't Surf, which is like their obsession with Apocalypse Now, which became Full Flower on and Scorsese and like all that, like American movies. Like this is like their American record right here.
Yeah, that is such a, they went full like kind of Beach Boys on that one.
Yeah.
It's very much a 50s like surf song.
Well, I mean that, Charlie Don't Surf, that was like their Apocalypse Now like reference. That was like the Coppola Charlie Don't Surf, like because they really got deep into that like Coppola Scorsese. In fact, I think Scorsese was going to put them in a really early version. Like he had this like idea for Gangs of New York. He was going to film in the '80s.
Oh wow!
It never got off the ground, and he was going to put the Clash as like one of the gangs in there, but that didn't happen.
I want to see whatever that was going to be. Yes.
Me too. But yeah, it's so great.
Well, as far as weird, one of my favorite songs was Ivan Meets G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And it is full of the laser gun sound that you buy, the little cheap little, you've all heard the sound.
Yeah.
It is full of that. I want to hear that song without that. Would really love to hear like a track minus that, just to hear what the song sounds like. But it's a great song. That was actually one of my favorites from this album.
Really?
Yeah. And actually that song reminded me of one of my favorite albums, which is Gogol Bordello's Gypsy Punks. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Well, throughout that album, there is also that laser gun sound throughout multiple songs on that album. So every time I would hear this song, it brought me into that one. I did actually go back and listen to that old album.
Which, and that's like the only song that Topper Heaton, the drummer, sings on. The entirety, I think I can't remember if he does anything on, like sings on, I don't think he does on Combat Rock, but like that's the only song where he has vocals on. The reason why you can get a London Calling, which, or a Sandinista, is because of Topper Heaton, because he was so good. Their second album, Give Enough Rope, Sandy Pearlman, who was like this big American rock producer, called Topper the human drum machine, because he could hit, like he could be kept time like nobody's business, but he could also play anything. Like Joe talks about how like Topper could play anything. Reggae could fit. He was like a R&B drummer or jazz drummer too. He could do reggae, he could do rockabilly, he could do pretty much anything. So like they could experiment because Topper was so good.
I can see that, because they do go through all of that on this album. There's even the Rebel Waltz. They literally do a waltz.
Yeah, yeah.
That is a waltz.
And that is a weird song too. It's got this like weird dreamy feel to it, and it's just so odd. There's just so much oddness and so much like, I don't know, let's do it. So, and I can't like talk about that enough. Like how like it feels like, oh.
Yeah, this whole album is like that. I mean, again, I listened to the first 4 songs and I was like, am I listening to the right thing?
Yeah.
But yeah, they just, everything is an experiment on this album.
But it doesn't feel like
it doesn't feel like they're just like dipping in there. They're doing it full on. They're doing it all the way through. They're not just doing a touch of reggae. It's a whole reggae song. Multiple times.
And it doesn't feel like, because I mean, you get like bands that like go way far up their own asses and like release a really high concept album with like lots of, like they do basically what Sandinista does, but they don't do it with enough, like with as much joy that the Clash do on this album, because like it is ambitious, yes, but not intentionally ambitious. It's ambitious because in sort of like a inability to stay still kind of way. It's not pretentious because it's just like, I don't know, let's do it. But with that, like it could have easily, if they'd come at it with a more like, like self-important direct like way, which I mean, there's a little bit of this and like a little bit of that peppered in, but because they're so excited about it and you can hear that, it doesn't feel as pretentious as it probably should.
Yeah. Okay. I see. I get you.
Yeah. And another thing they got over on CBS, preface this by saying that like Joe especially and the rest of the band, always their dedication to wanting to keep their records cheap.
Mm-hmm.
It came from like, especially Joe's like urge to help the underdog and help the, and which, the name Sandinista in of itself is like radical at that time. And like the catalog number for this album is FSL and 1, which is like
that's the party name.
The Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Joe always came at this. I mean, the rest of the band too, but Joe especially was always came at like he was for the people, and sometimes like he had somewhat naive ideas of like what that means, like, and sort of like teenage. Like he used to wear like a Brigati Rossi shirt, like the Red Brigade shirt, like which is like leftist, yeah, but not good guys. Like not like not like they killed Aldo Moro. Like these are not like like the good radicals that care about people. These are just assholes. Even in maybe they didn't have like early on well-developed sense of like the world, they cared about people and helping people and being and also like people, like there's interviews like in West Way of the World of like people listen to this record for the first time and it engages them and helps them learn about the world. Like you hear people talk about like, oh, I didn't even know like who the Sandinistas were.
Yeah, there's a lot of politics in this.
Yeah,
like,
and
not American politics, not British politics, but yeah,
just world, like the world, because like Joe especially was a citizen of the world. This record was released with an insert called the Armageddon Times, which is like their fanzine, but they put a release in that, and it's like documenting all like where there are popular movements around the world, anti-colonialism, repression movements happening around the world, and like. This record turned people on in ways that, like punk, for all its like tendencies to be like anti-authority, it was really sort of conservative in a way that like in that it didn't challenge people to like look beyond, like encourage people to challenge in small ways. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule. Like you got Mission of Burma, you've got the Clash, you've got Stiff Little Fingers, but for the most part, like Sex Pistols weren't advocating for anything other than like nothing.
They were not.
Yeah.
It was more of a show for Sex Pistols.
Yeah. But like Clash were one of the first bands were like saying, no, care. Like Joe said later on, like without people, you're nothing. Mm-hmm. It encouraged people to like learn, and maybe it turned some people on to what's happening in the world at that time. And that's, a good thing.
Yeah. Like the song Washington Bullets, they actually name names. That's actually where Sandinista came from.
Yeah.
In that song, they named names. They gave people's names. They said, "Hey, this is the thing. This is what it is." And there was even Kingston Advice.
Yeah.
They're talking about the political situation in Jamaica at the time.
Yeah.
So they were really about what was going on.
I mean, go back to the start, like the cover of their first album. Well, not the cover. I think the back side of the album was, I think a posterized version. I think Don Letts who's a friend of theirs, reggae DJ. Like he would play like sets at like one of the punk clubs and like early punk clubs in London. They would play like reggae sets in between punk bands playing. And I wish I could remember. There's a really good. Sorry, digress, but like there's a really good Bob Marley quote about punk saying like they're not Rasta, but they get it.
they know what I'm saying. They get me.
Like, they get it. Yeah, they're not Rasta, but they get it. But yeah, there's it's Don Letts. I think it's Don Letts at the Notting Hill Carnival, which devolved into like police repression. Like that's where you get like songs like White Riot, which is like we should care that people are being hurt, people are being like repressed, like the police are beating people, like peaceful people at the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah, there's one song where the street vendor is talking.
Yeah, that's That's from the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah, and he's just saying, I just want to sell my stuff. I just want these people out here to have a good time. Yeah. But at the same time, I see these police like beating people for bullshit.
Yeah.
And we get that now. And
yeah,
like especially the song "One More Time." That very much just echoes, because they mention like the Watts Watts riots, and it very much echoes the Black Lives Matter movement. And just, nothing's changed in the 40 years since this album's come out. We still have these same things going on.
It's if you know history, especially like, if you're like know British history a little bit, like a lot of the same stuff that they were dealing with then is the same stuff like we're coming to, like having our come to Jesus moment about, wrongfully, like way too late. But UK like had theirs, like there was riots in Notting Hill, which is where a lot of West Indians immigrants lived, in like the late 50s, and then again in like the mid late 70s. There were big riots, but mostly police caused. But then you also had like the Rock Against Racism movement that the Clash played in that big concert for. A lot of other bands too, but I didn't want to just single out the Clash, but it was but a lot of the same things that like UK has gone, like they've done their thing and they still have their problems, don't it's not like they've solved them or a band solved them, but you see a lot of the same stuff.
I think the song Up in Heaven is also about that, because he does talk about growing up in the projects basically, and just living in these shitty building conditions, and just that's your life.
which is also like ironic, because like Joe Strummer would sort of push against this for most of his life, but he was actually a fairly middle class kid. Like he was, like his father was a diplomat, and so Joe Strummer was actually born in Ankara in Turkey. He went to private boarding school, him and his brother, because his dad was traveling, so like his mom and dad traveled so much because he was a diplomat. He pretty much right after rejected that sort of like whenever he kind of embraced would be like later on in life, he would be the first one to say like, I'm a hippie at heart, like I'm a punk rock hippie, because he was a squatter. In fact, his early mentor Time and Dog is the one that does Lose It, like the fiddle song.
That's my other favorite song from this album. It's not really a Clash song.
It's a Time and Dog, like it's like Joe invited his buddy Time and Dog to play, like, you want to do a song? And they did his song.
That's an awesome song too.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Paul Simonon actually grew up like in like Brixton. Like he grew up in London with he was the real reggae head of the group.
Yeah.
Mick Jones was a kid that lived in Council Flats. Like of the band, like Joe Strummer was actually fairly middle class, but you really wouldn't know it.
That's kind of says something about you as well. Once you realize how things are and you can draw attention to it, regardless of your upbringing or your background, as once you can stop denying that something is a problem.
I don't want to like beatify Joe Strummer, because he had his faults, lots of them.
Yeah.
Because he had a tendency to like, he has a very short attention span. Of that, like, I think, like, the more I think about, like, I don't want to like diagnose him, but like he just went in different directions. But he was always tried his best to be kind to people. Mm-hmm. But sometimes his inclinations were to just like go off in a different direction, because that's where his brain was taking him.
Well, I will say that the one song that really feels out of place for me on this whole album is Broadway.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that one, but it just feels out of place. Even though everything else is different as well, this one just feels.
Yeah, it's one of those songs that's like, I don't know, to be honest, but it's weird. That's all I can say. Like whenever when you get into like Silicon Sapphire, it's like what is going on here? Or like they're not all great. Like that's I think what I love, weirdly what I love about this album is that they're actually not all great.
It could have been a really solid 2 albums. But some of it feels like nowadays, if a band's been around for a while, they will have like a greatest hits, and they'll have like a song or 2 that are new, and then they'll have like remixes or demo versions of old songs. And it seems like some of these songs would have been, that's where they would have shown up for any other band.
There's actually a really good compilation called Originally released an LP version as Black Market Clash, which is like a lot of really good B-sides and some like versions. Studio takes that never really made it anywhere.
Yeah.
The Super Black Market Clash, which is whenever it got re-released on CD, is awesome just because it has more of that.
Okay, I'll have to look that one up.
But then you get like Junko Partner, which I mean, there's no reason why the Clash would be covering Junko Partner other than, which is like an old like. I mean, they do a little bit of like Staggerly on London Calling. That is an old American standard song. Like, oh god, what's his name? But yeah, it's like an old like New Orleans like Louisiana song that.
Yeah, yeah. I did go back. I did listen to the original for that one, and what they did is drastically different than what the original is.
But it feels right, though. That's the weird thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great cover. It's a great song, even if you didn't realize it was a cover song. What they did is great. It's amazing.
Yeah. James Booker. That's what I was thinking about. James Booker does a really good version of that song. Like any like genre, like nothing is a monolith. Like there is no like single version of rap or hip hop. Like there is many flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it comes to hip hop, like I tend towards like interesting samples, or like one of my favorite records recently was like I like a lot of British rappers, but like Little Sims is great. She's one of my favorites. Or like older like early 90s stuff, either like really interesting samples or just because like I like I like the mix up and like the idea of like finding things and putting it in. You discover things because like there's not one thing. There's not like just like there's not one punk. There's not one. I mean, we all know there's like not one metal. There's many like different like vibes. You just got to find your sort of like thing.
Yeah. And like I said, whenever I first listened to this album, I went back, I listened to Stiff Little Fingers.
Yeah.
And Stiff Little Fingers is like the opposite kind of punk of the Clash. It is the traditional what you think of punk.
But weirdly, they're kind of right on, and they're like active. They're always called the Irish Clash.
Yeah.
I mean, the Clash went further than a lot of their like their graduating class of punk did. Like they did things that others didn't.
Yeah, they did reach a kind of a level of success that
I mean, beyond that,
not even just punk bands, just even rock bands did not get into.
I mean, success definitely, which I think they were. Mick Jones I think was the one who was like, yeah, this is cool, because I mean, Mick Jones at heart was a rock star. He loved glam rock. He loved
Alice Cooper and stuff like that, or
no, he was more into I like a lot. All the young dudes.
Mott the Hoople and stuff like that.
He was a huge Mott the Hoople fan. Okay. In fact, if you listen to like his song he wrote, "Stay Free," which is on "Give 'Em Enough Rope," it's very much Mott the Hoople, and like his guitar playing is very like Mott the Hoople-esque. Like his lead guitar, like how he plays, is very much Mott the Hoople. He was the rock star, also the good pop songwriter of the group of the Clash. Like he was a really good pop songwriter, and also became a really good producer. He produced like the Libertines' first full length. He was in Big Audio Dynamite, which is a great band, which was like his post-Clash band.
Oh, that's him. Okay.
And Don Lett.
A little more research there, I would have found that out.
It's all right. God, when Mick Jones got kicked out of the band in 83, 84, I can't remember. Fairly soon after Combat Rock, and like they're like when they really got big.
I know one of the songs, the Junkie Slip, was about Topper Heaton. Yeah, that got kicked out of the band or fired or something shortly after this album, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that like, because you watch like the documentary West Way to the World, and it's one of the things I think, other than kicking out Mick, who like in a lot of ways they're like brothers, like brothers that like loved and hated each other at the same time. Yeah. So like I think kicking out, like I think he feels worse about kicking him out because him and Mick were so much alike and such like personalities. But I think in retrospect, I think Joe feels like much worse about like kicking Topper out of the band because Topper had a problem. Like he had,
it wasn't a personality. It was not somebody you weren't getting along with. It was
it's like
something beyond that. Yeah.
When your drummer's on heroin and it's hard to like,
it's hard to drum.
Yeah, it's hard to drum. But like, I think, getting kicked out of the Clash, I think it didn't help. Mm-hmm. I think Joe, like in retrospect, really like felt that, and like he later on, I think more so than kicking Mick out, that he felt so bad about kicking Topper out. I think he felt bad about kicking Mick out because like they had magic together, because they were like such good foils for each other. Because like Mick would rein Joe in.
Yeah, I would notice when I was doing this, I look up each song kind of individually, and I see who wrote, who produced, who did all that.
Yeah.
And it looked like Mick was kind of producing a lot. He was kind of songwriting a lot. He was.
Yeah, he was.
It was pretty much the two of them for the Clash. Is most of the Clash, it seemed.
Yeah, Mick was a studio nerd. Like he loved getting into the studio, and like he did that later. Like you hear that a lot more, like especially when you get into like Big Audio Dynamite, his subsequent band. I think Joe would have been just as happy like being in a successful rock band as he would have being like a busker for the rest of his life. Like I think he would have been just as happy.
Yeah.
Because he just wanted to like. I mean, there was an ego there too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, he's not like a saint. He liked the idea of that sort of like gauzy artist tendency that Joe had, like this sort of like a lost artist quality. I think Mick grounded him a lot and kept him like tight, channeled what was good about Joe's songwriting and made it, for lack of a better word, like channeled it and made it cohesive.
I know Combat Rock was the album after this. Rock the Casbah and Should I Stay or Should I Go? That's what I remember hearing when I was little and seeing the videos. But I guess they didn't last too much long after that, I guess.
In a way they did, because there is a last Clash album that is after Combat Rock, but it is like Voldemort. It is the one that shall not be named.
Talked about?
Because it really isn't a Clash album, because it is... So you can't talk about the Clash without talking about their... So actually, one of the reasons why Sandinista is a thing is because they kicked out their manager Bernie Rhodes, who was like this sort of like wannabe Malcolm McLaren type, this like Svengali, very sort of like talk about ego. Bernie Rhodes was like huge hit, like pretentious to the core. But what he's really good at was not manipulating, but he was good at setting the scene. He was good at like positioning. He was good at like the chess of being like a band manager.
Okay.
Not a great dude. Like if you know anything about the Clash, like Bernie Rhodes inspired a lot of like what made the Clash great initially, but after that he just became kind of like too getting high on his own supply in a lot of ways. So they kicked him out. Like London Calling was then like, let's make this work without him, and Sandinista too in a lot of ways. But then like they brought him back, or Joe was like one, like after like the excesses of Sandinista, Joe was like, well, we need Bernie back because he'll institute some order. And that's why like on Rock the Casbah, you got to let that raga drop, because when they're recording Combat Rock, they're recording like 5 or 6 minute songs. They were doing like jams, because like there's a version of Combat Rock. It was originally titled Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg, which was an old 60s TV show. But it's like the songs are much longer, much more like drawn out, much more jammy. And Bernie Rhodes was like, why does everything have to be a raga? And he said that with a sort of like posh accent, but which I'm not going to do. Joe's like, Bernie. So he's like, the king told the boogeyman, you got to let that raga drop. So that's like sort of like a little mini dig at Bernie. But Bernie came back and sort of infected Joe's brain and said like, this Mick guy, he's not really like, doing what he should be doing. He's always late and all this kind of stuff.
Okay. He just had his ear and was like,
Yeah, like whispering, like a little like worm tongue.
Cream of worm tongue?
Yeah. He Green Worm tongue Joe Strummer for to kick Mick out. So Bernie could come in, and the album after Combat Rock is called Cut the Crap, which is, I'm gonna say, fucking terrible. It is like There is one song on there that is okay, called This Is England. That is the one okay song in an album that is terrible.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even mess with that one. I listened to the earlier albums, and I did actually ask a couple of people that I know that would have listened to this when they were growing up, and I wanted their input on, how did Sandinista fit in with you listening to the Clash when it was coming out? They were like, well, it's this and this. But they had nothing to say about Cut the Crap.
Yeah, because there's nothing to say about it, because like it's a different band.
Yeah.
Because I think like Bernie Rhodes basically took it over. Like I think by the time Joe had given up, Paul was there, because Paul is it was like
studio musicians. Just we need a drummer, we need a bass player to play this, and
yeah, it was like the only original, like, it was Paul and Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of them were just like, we're done, whatever. And they just like handed it off to Bernie, and Bernie's like turned it into like the worst album ever. It is so bad. It is so bad. It is the Rise of Skywalker of.
Aw.
Like I feel the same way about that album as I feel about like Rise of Skywalker. And it's like, I love this like whole universe so much, but then like, why did you do this? Sorry, that's a
no. I get you.
It's worth listening to just because of like how did this happen? Because I think it came out in '86, but there was like a good song that came out in that era that didn't make it to. You can find it on if you're really hardcore Clash fan, you can find it on like different like compilations of Joe stuff, or like it's available. A song called "In the Pouring Rain," which is a really good song.
Yeah,
but it came out of that era, but it was not
included on the album.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look for that.
Yeah, I think there's a version of it on. So the Joe Strummer documentary, "The Future Is Unwritten," is a really great documentary about Joe. But on that soundtrack, a really good version of that song is on there.
So what did Joe Strummer do after this? Was he just solo stuff, or?
So yeah, Joe went through like almost like a 15 or like I guess the Clash technically broke up in like '86. And he went through what he called like his wilderness period. And it was a lot of like doing solo stuff. So and doing movies too. He was buddies with like Jim Jarmusch. So he like, if you watch, he's like a character in Mystery Train. Like Joe Strummer is in the movie Mystery Train, which is
okay. Yeah, I love Down by Law. So
but Mystery Train's great. It's one of my favorite movies in the entire world. So Joe's in that, and like it's like what do you call it? Like a movie that revolves around one place, but like different stories that happen around like one place.
Is that the one with the Japanese people go to Memphis? Okay, I have seen that.
Yeah, so it's all like 3 different stories that revolve around this one like little motel in Memphis, and Screaming Jay Hawkins plays like the person at the counter, and he's great. He's got a phenomenal suit.
I need to rewatch that one. It's been a while. I remember it being a great movie though.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi's in it. I don't think anybody else. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on Jim Jarmusch movies too.
I know. I kind of want to now.
Yeah.
What bands would you say were like immediately influenced by the Clash? Even during while they were alive, even while they were together, or post breakup, or who would you put there?
The thing about a band like the Clash, because they were so like integral to like what like punk, like I'm using air quotes right now, punk is. So it's hard to find like a punk band that was not like influenced by the Clash, like a so-called punk band that was not stated in their thing, like not influenced by the Clash, but I think feels more real, like Stiff Little Finger is definitely influenced by the Clash, but then again you get like Public Enemy, who like Chuck D, he narrated a thing about the Clash, like he loves the Clash. MIA loved the Clash. Like I mean, it's easy to glom onto like the like punkness of like their first album, yeah. But then, like, you listen to, there's a really good cover of Rock the Casbah by Algerian French singer called Rahi Taha. He does an Arabic version of Rock the Casbah, and it is picture perfect. It's so good. So, like, any band that has the uniform of the Clash probably isn't actually influenced by the Clash, but if there's, like, a spirit of the Clash, it is fighting for the underdog, the people that, that need a voice, and giving art to that voice, whether they know it or not, or they admit it or not. The Clash is in every band that like now that is willing to like be out there with how they see the world and trying to make the world better, but doing it in a way that is awesome, like that is like fun to listen to, because like you can listen to like boring ass folk songs like all day long, but I don't want to listen to that. I would rather much listen to like MIA, who like peppers like really like right on politics with fucking bangers. Like honestly, like that's what I would like. That's what the Clash did. Like you get consciousness and you get like good music at the same time. Like what is it? Was it Anderson .Paak? Yeah, Lockdown. That's the Clash right there. I mean, it's not the spirit, not directly influenced, and I don't want to like put that. That's not what I'm saying. Like that is directly influenced with the Clash, but like it's got that same thing that sort of powered what the Clash are about. Is the same spirit, the same muse is there.
I get you.
Yeah, like because I wouldn't deign to like put influences where influences are not, but you know, it's the same thing that inspired sort of the who the Clash were is the same thing that like lives on in songs that are righteous but also badass. Like it's the only way to put like they're just good. I love me some old like Woody Guthrie, but goddamn, I do not want to listen to a like an alt Americana artist whinging about like sadness in 2020. I'm sorry. I want like a good I want like a fat bass line and drums, and like I want a good singer, something that will like by osmosis get people to think.
Gotcha.
Because like through dance you shall think.
There we go. So is there, do you have a favorite song on this album? What would it be?
Oh yeah.
You just pick one. You only get one.
Oh god. I have to go to the track list here. So I will give you a list, and because I like them for different reasons.
Okay.
I love the Magnificent Seven just because it is just so off the wall and weird, and it's got such a really good beat, and it's like
yes,
it's like it's a disco song with like early like that cadence of early hip hop, which is like I find so endearing.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about disco. Like this is the time like right after like the Rolling Stones did Miss You. It's right around that time where like rock bands were like, I'll do a little disco in here.
Which is weird because like you talk about like the backlash against disco, which is inherently like racist and homophobic backlash. Mm-hmm. People, they didn't quote unquote like disco because black people and gay people like disco. that's really what the
what it was. Yeah.
What it was. So yeah, there's that. But so I love the Magnificent Seven just because it combines like all that like weird like that early hip hop cadence and beat with Joe's just absolutely like strange brain like working in rhymes, and like
it almost feels like a stream of conscious kind of.
I mean, he includes the line nice. "Vacuum cleaner sucks up budgie." I mean, and then he does his like. It's funny because like, I'll play that song on the radio, and like it's on our it's on like on the radio. I'll play that song. But it's really low in the mix, and you can almost hear it, and it's on the radio too. Because if you listen to the single version of that song, and because Joe says it in such a thick accent, he goes, "It's fucking long, isn't it?" Or "Fucking long, isn't it?" And like he just slurs it, so that's on the record near the end. So I love that song.
But, I do have a question about that song, real quick. Is budgie slang for something other than a bird?
No, it's just British a bird.
Slang for something?
No, it's just a bird.
It's the bird. Okay.
It's a canary. Yeah.
All right. It's just a bird. All right.
Just a bird. So yeah, it's just so like who would say that? But I love Police on My Back. It's a really awesome cover. Mm-hmm. I love Somebody Got Murdered because it's just a really good like
great
rock pop song. But I think for my money, I think I love the back-to-back One More Time and One More Dub. There's so many like bands that try to do reggae that are Jamaican, like and I'm saying bands, I'm saying white bands, like rock bands that try to do like reggae. This is the only like band
where it works
that do it in a way that's like not like doesn't feel like forced. This is a way that is very much feels true, like it is the spirit of like they get it. And also doing like the dub version, which I love. Like what I love about like getting like reggae, like I buy a lot of 45s, is I love getting the single, but I also love the dub version that always happens on the flip because they're always so weird, and so like that's the producer going crazy. Yeah, having fun.
Yeah, okay.
So like toasters can come back in and like rap or toast over it. But I love that combination of, because like Mikey Dread is in there, and Mikey Dread has got such a good like he's such a good toaster. Like he just comes in there, he's got such a the timbre of his voice, and like Joe is like I think that's the most like right on sort of like true to like what their influences were and like the closest to Jamaican music that you'll find outside of like actual Jamaican.
I get you.
Yeah.
Do you think you can sing your favorite line?
Oh God.
Yeah, you don't have to sing it. You can just.
I mean, I can do. I probably do a little bit of Magnificent Seven just because I ring 7 a.m. Oh, move yourself to go again. Cold water in the face moves you to this awful place. Knuckle this is two. Turning out that boogaloo. I can't. I get lost. I know I've listened to that song so many times, but I get lost in that song. Vacuum cleaner sucks up budgie. Oh, that's like Joe's like Call of the Wildebeest that he did a lot.
Nice. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
What's on your replay right now? What are you listening to? Non-Clash.
I mean, actually, this is rather appropriate because an artist I've been listening to a lot, and I played her on the radio. She's an artist from Washington, D.C. She goes by the name of Sneaks, and she is so good and punk in the way that this album is punk. In that, like, because she comes from like a DC punk background, but she produced this record that's like avant dance, like electro disco, sort of like defies genre is the best way to put it. A song called Faith, which is really good. It has like this like flavor that's just sort of like dancey but like arty, and it feels so punk in that way that it's just like, this is who I am. I'm being true to like what I want to do, and it's like it's not any. Again, it's going back to like the anti-orthodoxy. It's not dance music, but it is. It's not like dance punk, but it is. It's not, hip hop. It's not like electronic music, but it is all those things, but it's none of those things at the same time. There's also a band in town called Annabelle Chairlegs, and they've got a track called Candy Apple Red, which is just so phenomenal, just so good. It reminds me a lot of the Slits, which is great. It's just a great song. And also Little Sims, love Little Sims, British rapper. She's awesome. Like anything she does, I will listen to. Again, Slow Thigh from UK as well. He's awesome. Fontaines DC, awesome band from Dublin. They're like post-punk, but very literary post-punk, like and like a very like, how do I put it? It's so cliche to say this about them because everybody writes this about them because like the singer, he writes songs in a very like James Joycean way, so it's like they're very poetic. Right. But every hack writer writing about Fontaines DC says that, but it's true. But it's a really great band. So those are some of my favorites as of this moment.
I'll definitely check some of those out. Also,
Beyonce's last single, Black Parade, is awesome. That is an earworm.
Okay.
One. And also weirdly, it reminds me of God, tenuous connections at best, but like it reminds me of some of like the melodies remind me of some of the later Mescalero stuff with Joe Strummer. Just melodies, not like content wise, but just some of like little like musical cues kind of remind me of that. So it's a great song.
All right, cool. I'll definitely check some of those out. Is there anything else you want to add, or
I think I've said everything.
Know about you? Anything anybody you should know about you or anything? Or
so I'm on KUTX Sundays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So listen to that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think Instagram is the best place to find me. I'm on Austin Calling 84. So there you go, Austin Calling. But yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, I love picking your brain about all this.
Oh,
it's great.
You get me started. I hope you don't regret asking me to talk about the Clash.
Oh, no, it was awesome. It's fine. I love it. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Levi.
Enjoyed having you on.
And it was good to talk to you again. It's been so long.
It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been outside.
Yeah. Well, hope you get us outside and hope you get to doing stuff.
I'll make it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Oh, you have a good night then.
You too. I'll see you, Levi.
Right. See ya. So please check us out every other Monday and follow along on Facebook at Wax Poetic Podcast and also on Instagram at Wax Poetic Podcast and of course on Twitter at Wax Poetic Pod.
been doing this podcast for a while. Have there been like songs that you've been like, oh, I didn't know I liked this?
But well, a lot of rap is what people have been picking because I just ask people what album you want to talk about, and it's up to them, and then I'll listen to it 10, 11 times, whatever, just to get my head around it and try to put myself into it. And I mean, I don't listen to rap. It's not something I when I was little, the first music that I found for myself was like metal.
Yeah.
And then I moved on to punk. And I kind of just stayed around there. I was aware of a lot of other music happening. I would just be like, oh, this sucks. That sucks. This sucks. That sucks. I was very negative about other types of music.
Yeah.
But then once I started actually just making myself go to karaoke, I realized, oh, people love Katy Perry. Like, she loves singing Katy Perry. It makes her happy. I get why people like this. I don't know what was wrong with me. I understand music now. It took me a long time to realize why people like music somehow. but as far as me discovering things, like it's been a lot of rap lately, which is fine. I get it. I totally understand why people like rap. I mean, my exposure to rap before was, when growing up, my brother was the rap guy, my older brother. Mm-hmm. He was the one that would listen to like 2 Live Crew and anything else, any other rap. That's what I heard was from him. That's about my basic rap knowledge. Was from there. I understand who a lot of the players are now, but I don't. If you ask me who is that, I would not know.